尊敬的各位代表，我宣布生物多样性公约缔约方大会第15次会议、生物安全议定书缔约方第10次会议和名古屋议定书缔约方第40。
Distinguished delegates, I would like to call to order the joint plenary of COP15, COP10 to the Cartagena Protocol and COP4 to Nagoya Protocol. I would like to, first of all, report on the high-level segment held in a hybrid format on 12th and 13th October. With the support of all parties, the high-level segment of COP15 achieved great results. With 2 plenary sessions and 4 roundtables, 95 delegates from parties and from international institutions have attended the meeting. President Xi made a important speech, and the Secretary General also made very excellent remarks, which have brought a great momentum to biodiversity protection and also boost our confidence in halting biodiversity loss and pointed the direction for all of us. We also have adopted the Kunming Declaration to provide the political momentum. In the roundtables, we have centered around the theme of the conference, Ecological Civilization, building a shared future for all life on Earth, and 4 roundtable topics: road to biodiversity restoration, bridging the financing gap and ensuring the means of implementation, biodiversity conservation and sustainable development, as well as knowledge, innovation, and benefit sharing. We shared how to collectively build a shared future for all life on Earth, shared good practices and success stories in biodiversity conservation. Many recommendations and ideas were put forward, which are practical and ready for action, laying a solid foundation for our future work. My report of the high-level segment is available on the conference website. I would like to thank all the ministers, delegates, and experts who have made great contributions to the high-level segment and provided rich insights, providing clear guidance for our future work. In particular, I would like to thank the co-chairs of the 4 roundtables, especially the ministers from Egypt, our COP14 president, and also ministers from France, Turkey, and Colombia, as well as colleagues from China who hosted the roundtables. Now I would like to turn to the report of the parallel events. As you know, the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China, with the support of the CBD Secretariat and other partners, organized the Ecological Civilization Forum and 7 thematic sub-forums yesterday and this morning. Now I would like to invite Mr. Cui Shuhong, Director General of the Department of Nature and Ecology of the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, to report on the main outcomes of this forum. Mr. Cui, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. President. delegates, representatives, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Now I would like to report to the plenary the results of the Ecological Civilization Forum. From 14 to 15th October, our ministry, the Justice Parliament, and the Natural Resources Department, and also the Institute of Sciences, as well as CBD Secretariat, UNDP, and also UNEP, Asian Development Bank, World Nature Conservation, and also other organizations organized this forum along with levels of government. We held the forums of ecological civilization. 2,100 representatives attended the forum offline and offline. 100 experts and delegates made speeches on the forum. And we also made an initiative to co-build globalization, ecological civilization. And we also have a lot of key speeches from guests to emphasize on the co-building of ecological civilization and also to embark on the new chapter of human being. President Xi's speech have boosted our confidence and also have injected impetus in our political momentum. The forum promoted 4 suggestions. First of all, we need to follow the ecological civilization and build harmony between human beings and nature to mainstream biodiversity protection into all aspects of society, respect nature, follow its laws and protect it, and also mainstream biodiversity and co-build ecological civilizations. Second, green mountains are gold mountains. We must monetize natural resources so that we can yield great results. Third, we need to leverage nature-based solutions to deal with climate change and hold biodiversity loss so that we can protect mountains, rivers, forests, farmlands, lakes, and grasslands, which needs the engagement of the whole of society. Fourth, we need to protect biodiversity and deal with climate change, which is 2 sides of a coin. These are interconnected, need to be promoted coordinately. We need to leverage the whole society to build green economy and circular economy. Fifth, biodiversity is the basic of human beings' well-being. We need to account for biodiversity loss so that we can promote our international experience exchanges and leverage the accounting of biodiversity loss into economic development. Next, we also leverage biodiversity to boost global economic development. The climate change is impacting on our Tibet environment. We need to conduct more researches on the environmental protection in Tibet Plateau so that we can build the ecosystem barrier there. Seventh, we need to build financial partnerships for ecological protection. We need to build initiatives for the financial sector, such as banks, so that we can provide incentives for financial products such as bonds and other facilities to promote ecological protection and cooperation. We need to build international cooperation in this field so that we can promote scientific researches and the financial sectors, media, and the public to contribute to international ecological protection. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives, the forum has provided a good foundation for global biodiversity protection. sharing a lot of experiences. We need to learn from it so that we can join hands and work together to co-build a beautiful future for all. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Che. Distinguished delegates, from 27th to 28th October in Kunming, we organized the NGO Forum. Now I would like to invite Mr. Xu Guang, Secretary General of China Environmental Protection Foundation, to report on the outcomes. Thank you very much, Mr. President. From September 27th to 28th in Kunming, we hosted the forum along with the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China and also with the CBD Secretariat. The NGO forum was held in Kunming with delegates from 31 countries and 249 organizations. The forum was held online and offline. The forum has launched 3 initiatives, including the initiative voluntary commitments of non-state actors. This forum has provided a platform for women, indigenous people, and other people to voice their concerns, which has made a great contribution. Non-stakeholders play a very important part in biodiversity protection and governance. However, in order to boost their voice, we need to have more support from United Nations institutions, CBD Secretariat, and also all countries. The forum has formed several recommendations so that we can provide support for a new pathway to formulate the post-2020 biodiversity framework. Second, under the post-2020 biodiversity fund, non-state actors need to work with state actors so that we can provide more support. And we also need to encourage the engagement of indigenous people and the local communities, and the training for them also need to be supported. Fourth, we also need to leverage NBS into the framework design and also to create synergies with other institutions and instruments. And we also need to pay attention to those less publicized species and ecosystems. Fifth, in the post-2020 GBF, we need to pay more attention to marine protection. And also, sixth, we need to engage private sector into the decision making so that we can leverage more investors into the green finance and ESG system so that we can have better assessment of the impact of biodiversity. Seventh, in the post-2020 GBF framework, we need to have more training and support for non-state stakeholders, and we also need to have more awareness building. Next, we also want to leverage technical and technological measures to have a monitoring of species and local protection. Next, we also suggest the CBD Secretariat to continue to work with non-stakeholders in China and also to realize the non-stakeholder voluntary commitment. And we also will publish and communicate the global 100 species of best practices and case studies. All of these are the results of the parallel sessions. I would also like to report that the 10 Chinese non-state organizations and enterprises have committed to invest 2.55 billion RMB in the next decade to support biodiversity protection projects in China to help protect 10 million hectares of areas in China. This is their response to the call by the President Xi in the summit of COP15. And this is also the first commitment of private sector in China to protect biodiversity. We will also encourage more non-state actors in China and in the rest of the world to provide more support for the post-2020 GBF. Last but not least, I would like to wish every success of COP15 and also make a bigger contribution for the world and the human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Xu, for your report. Distinguished delegates, now we return to our agenda under the Conference of the Party, Agenda Item 3. Specifically, Agenda Item 3 on credentials. Now, delegates, I would like to invite Mr. Eric Okori of Ghana to provide a report on credentials. Mr. Okori, you have the floor. Thank you, 主席，允许我发言。
I am very pleased to make the following report on the credentials of the representatives of the first part of COP15, COP10, and COP4. I would like to inform you that 154 contracting parties are registered as attending the first part of COP15. Pursuant to Rule 19 of the Rules of Procedure of the Conference of Parties, the Bureau has, as of its last meeting on 14th October 2021, examined the credentials of the representatives of 154 contracting parties that are attending the meeting. The credentials of the representatives of 107 parties were in full compliance with Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure. The delegations of 47 parties attending the meeting had not submitted valid credentials or had to yet present their credentials. Mr. President, on behalf of the Bureau, I am very pleased to also make the following report on the credentials of representatives of the first part of COP10 of the Cartagena Protocol. I would like to inform you that 132 contracting parties to the Cartagena Protocol are registered as attending the first part of COP10. The credentials of the representatives of these 132 contracting parties were examined. Accordingly, the credentials of representatives of 93 parties to the Cartagena Protocol were in full compliance with Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure, while representatives from 39 parties who are attending the meeting had not submitted valid credentials or had to yet present their credentials. Mr. President, on behalf of the Bureau, I am very pleased to also make the following report on the credentials of representatives to the first part of COP4 of the Nagoya Protocol. I would like to inform you that 104 contracting parties to the Nagoya Protocol are registered as attending COP4. The credentials of the representatives of these 104 contracting parties that are attending the first part of COP4 were examined. The credentials of representatives from 67 parties were in full compliance with Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure. The credentials of representatives from 37 parties attending the meeting did not fully comply with Rule 18 or had not yet submitted credentials. The Bureau recognized the extraordinary situation created by the pandemic as a possible factor contributing to the delay in obtaining and submitting credentials in time by the representatives concerned. The Bureau therefore proposed that, in keeping with past practice and taking into account the extraordinary situation, delegations that have not yet submitted credentials that meet the requirements for Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure shall be requested to provide their proper credentials within 30 days of the closure of the meetings. That is, not later than 15th November 2021. The Bureau also requested that the Executive Secretary follow up on this matter. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, Mr. Okori. Dear guests, I note that due to special pandemic situation, there are some delays in submission of credentials by a number of parties. Therefore, I urge parties who have not yet done so to submit their credentials urgently. Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. Now, I'd like to adjourn the joint plenary and resume the meeting of COP15. Distinguished delegates, now we turn to agenda item 4, pending issues. The only pending issue before the conference of the party relates to paragraph 1 of Rule 40 of the Rules of Procedures and paragraph 4 and 16 of the Financial Rules, which remain bracketed due to the lack of consensus among parties on the modules for decision-making on matters of substance. And the Conference of the Parties does not appear to be in a position to adopt the outstanding rules. Therefore, I propose that this issue be deferred until our next meeting. Do I see any objection? No. It's so decided. Now, I'd like to adjourn the meeting of COP15 and resume the joint plenary. We'll continue the COP15, COP10, and the COP4, the joint plenary. Distinguished delegates, let's turn to item 6 under the convention. Item 4 under the Cartagena Protocol and item 4 under the Nagoya Protocol, which is reports of the intersessional and regional preparatory meetings. As specified in the annotation to the agenda for part 1 of the meeting, the following reports are made available. 1. Report on the 11th meeting of the ad hoc open-ended intersessional working group on Article 8J and related provisions of the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD-WGAJ/11/7. Next, report on the 23rd meeting of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice, containing document CBD/SB STTA/29/9 and Reports of the first and second meetings of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, containing document CBD/WG 2020/1/5 and CBD/WG 2020/2/4. All these reports are before the Conference of the Parties and the respective meetings of the protocols for their consideration. Delegates are reminded that the reports of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice on its 24th meeting, and the subsidiary body on implementation on its third meeting, as well as the third meeting of the working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, will be presented to the Conference of the Parties at the second part of its meeting in 2022. Now, I invite the COP15, COP10 of the Cartagena Protocol, and the COP4 of the Nagoya Protocol to each take note of the reports and then to consider their recommendations under the relevant agenda items and each body during part 2 of the meeting. Distinguished delegates, now I would like to invite chairs of the subsidiary bodies and working groups to make a brief intervention. First, I invite the representative of the COP15 president as chair of the 11th meeting of the working group on Article 8J and related provisions to deliver a brief report. Ms. Zedan, you have the floor.
好，请问泽代先生，你在线吗？
Mr. Zedan, are you online?
泽代先生现在没。
Looks like Mr. Zedan is not connected online. We would like to invite the next representative. I have to invite the next speaker, which is Benitez of the 23rd meeting of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice to report on their outcome.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Hope you can hear me. Good. Your Excellency, Minister Huang, President of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to provide the Conference of the Parties with a brief update on the work of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice. For the sake of time, I will focus my intervention on the scientific and technical support provided to the development of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. You have already seen the report of SUBTA 23 under Agenda Item 3. While I do not intend to dwell on this, again, for the sake of time, I wish to note that SUBTA 23, which took place in November 2019 in Montreal, already advanced important early work to inform the scientific and technical evidence base for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So, we were off on a very good way to provide effective and timely support to the work of the open-ended working group, while delivering on our program of work as established by COP14. Then the pandemic hit, and with it came the need to profoundly recalibrate our work in order to keep the political momentum, despite the challenging circumstances and significant delays and to make the best use of the requisite changes in working arrangements. I do believe that due to the tireless support of the Secretariat and the flexibility and support of all parties, we deliver well here. I wish to mention, in particular, the various briefing webinars, the special virtual sessions, and the informal session of Substack that we organized between July 2020 and February 2021. The first part of Substack 24 took place online from the 3rd of May to 13 June 2021. And while we made some progress, a considerable amount of work remains to be undertaken. This is perhaps due to the limitations of the virtual format in enabling a dynamic and equitable exchange and dialogue, but also to the intricate interlinkages across agenda items and correspondingly across the bodies of the convention that are being tasked with these agenda items. This make it very challenging to advance on a particular issue in isolation. A particularly compelling example is the task of Substack to provide scientific and technical information to support the review of the updated goals and targets and related indicators and baselines, where best advice by Substack will be given if based on the latest discussions on the goals and targets in the open-ended working group. It is for this reason that we envisage as a general approach the resumed sessions in Geneva, including the resumed session of Substack 24, to be held concurrently over the 2.5-week period so we can ensure coherence among the work of the bodies and allow for an iterative approach. The detailed program will be developed in the coming weeks together with the post-2020 co-chairs and the COP and Substack Bureau. I look forward to continue working closely with the Secretariat and the Subsidiary Bureau and in close collaboration with the COP Bureau under the able leadership of our new presidency, as well as the post-2020 co-chairs and with my colleague, the chair of SBI3, Ms. Charlotta Sapkist from Sweden, to ensure that the resumed sessions in Geneva will deliver as one while advancing all the items on our work program and bring us one step closer to our common goals. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
非常感谢本尼台茨先生。现在泽代先生已。
Thank you, Mr. Benitez. I now invite the chair of Subsidiary. Now I see Mr. Zedan is back online, so let me invite Mr. Zedan to make the speech.
Zedan 先生在吗？好，请您发言。好，请泽南先生，请您发言。
We can see you. We can see you. Please, the floor is yours.
泽南先生，你能听得见吗？
Yes, you have the floor.
泽南先生，请你发言。
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you hear me?
能听得见，非常好。
Loud and clear, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ad hoc open-ended intersessional working group on Article 8J and the related provisions of the Convention on Biological Diversity held its 11th meeting in Montreal, Canada, in the traditional territories of the Mohawk Nation from 20 to 22nd November 2019. I had pleasure to co-chair the meeting with Mr. Lakpa Nouri Sherpa, representing indigenous peoples and local communities. The working group adopted 4 recommendations concerning the in-depth dialogue on the thematic areas and other cross-cutting issues, the development of a new program of work and institutional arrangements on Article 8J, and other provisions of the Convention related to indigenous peoples and local communities. Adopt options for possible elements of work aimed at integration of nature and culture in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and follow up to recommendations from the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues to the Convention on Biological Diversity. In addition, the working group included an in-depth dialogue on the cross-cutting issue of the contribution of the traditional knowledge, innovations, and practices of indigenous peoples and local communities and cultural diversity to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. In its second recommendation, the working group decided to develop a new program of work on Article 8J and the other provisions of the Convention related to the indigenous peoples and local communities aligned with the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, with the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities. The working group developed some objectives, general principles, and the draft elements for the new program of work. The proposed objective would be to promote, within the framework of the Convention, a just implementation of the Article 8J and the related provisions at the local, national, regional, and international levels, and to ensure the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities at all stages and the levels of its implementation, ensuring an ongoing recognition of the unique association that indigenous peoples and local communities have with the Convention and its protocols. The draft general principles relate to the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities, valuing traditional knowledge, innovations, and practices, and giving them the same respect as other forms of knowledge. A holistic approach consistent with the spiritual and cultural values and customary practices of the indigenous peoples and local communities. The application of the ecosystem approach. Free, prior, and informed consent for access to traditional knowledge, innovations, and practices, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits, and the importance of monitoring and indicators. It was agreed that the new program of work would be finalized after COP15, following peer review of the draft elements, consideration by an ad hoc technical expert group, and subsequently by the working group, which would also consider the future institutional arrangements. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it is my view that the unique association that indigenous peoples and the local communities have with the convention and its protocols is one of the biggest strengths of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Indigenous peoples and the local communities make great contributions to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, and I am pleased to see this recognized in recent assessments such as the APA's Global Assessment and acknowledged in the Kunming Declaration. It is essential that the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework further strengthens the role of indigenous peoples and local communities, empowers them, and respects and protects their rights, listening to their wisdom and moving forward together. Well, we can put biodiversity on a path to recovery and achieve our shared vision of living in harmony with nature. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zedan. Now, I would like to invite the chair of the subsidiary body on implementation to report on the work of SBI, Mr. Soquist. Now you have the floor. Mrs. Soquist, are you online?
好，谢谢你。
Your Excellency, Mr. Wang, President on the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to also add my thanks for this opportunity to provide the Conference of the Parties with a brief update on the work of a subsidiary body on implementation. Following in the footsteps of my colleague, the Substa Chair, for the sake of time, I too will keep my statement brief and focus on outstanding work of SBI-3 related to a post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Although SBI-3 will of course conclude all its work in January next year in Geneva, Switzerland, before the resumed session of COP15 in 2022. As we are all aware and have lived through it, last year was difficult because of the pandemic, and thus the postponement of the physical meeting of SBI-3, which had been scheduled for May 2020. But as human spirit always rises to many challenges around us, I was pleased that we were able to hold the first part of SBI-3 in May-June of this year, where the very fruitful discussions amongst the parties and stakeholders has allowed us to maintain momentum on the very important discussions on biodiversity and move the agenda forward for the development of a draft one of a post-2020 global biodiversity framework. The report of the session is online already, and I invite you all to read it. During 2020, while decisions on the way forward were still under discussion, I am pleased to report that we used the time effectively to hold many online webinars on mostly all the agenda items that are under SBI-3. Additionally, we also used the opportunity to test an online party-led open forum on review system during the first virtual session of Substan SBI held by the CBD in September 2020. We also held a joint Substan SBI virtual session on biodiversity, One Health and COVID-19 in December 2020. All through January and early February this year, we continue to hold webinars on various SBI agenda items to raise awareness, including on gender, review of progress in the implementation of the Convention and the strategic plan, mainstreaming, mechanism for reporting, assessments and review implementation, among other issues. In addition, we held an informal session of SBI Free from 8 to 12 of March this year, where most of SBI agenda items had a first reading, which held the formal virtual session in May-June 2021 to make considerable progress. While our achievements are many, we still have a lot to do in Geneva before we return to Kunming next year. As you know, COP15 will adopt a package of decisions that will support the implementation of a post-2020 global biodiversity framework, including on resource mobilization, capacity building, technical and scientific cooperation, gender and communications for the post-2020 period, mainstreaming biodiversity across all sectors, cooperation amongst all multilateral processes, and enhanced review and reporting mechanism, and also decisions related to the Nagoya Protocol and the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. For this reason, I look forward to continue to work closely with you, Mr. President, the COP Bureau and the Secretariat, as well as the post-2020 co-chairs, Mrs. Frances Ogwal of Uganda and Mr. Basile van Haab of Canada, and my colleague, the chair of SAPSTA, Mr. Benitez Diaz of Mexico, to ensure that the resumed sessions in Geneva will deliver what we need to bring us to a successful conclusion in Kunming next year during the resumed session of COP15. Thank you.
好，非常感谢索奎斯特女士。我们期待未来在日内瓦继续进行两个附属机构的会议。下面我们请2020年后全球生物多样性框架不限成员名额工作组联合主席汇报2020年后全球生物多样性框架准备工作的进展情况。首先，请范阿弗尔先生发言。
Mr. President, there was no English interpretation, but as I see my microphone is open, I assume you'd like us to make our report. Can you confirm?
Yes, indeed. Please begin. You have the floor, please.
I'll assume that this means that you agree, and I will go on with the report, and please stop me if needed. Your Excellency, Minister Wang, President of the 15th Conference of the Parties, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Together with my co-chair, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to provide the Conference of the Party with an update on the work of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. In line with the mandate under Decision 1434 and guiding principle for the preparatory process, we are pleased to report that the working group has continued to make progress toward an ambitious and transformative post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and advance its work through a party-led process. At the outset, we would like to acknowledge the overwhelming expression of support and commitment expressed by all heads of states and government and many ministers and many senior delegates during the Leaders' Summit and the high-level segment of COP15. We are more confident than ever that an ambitious and transformative post-2020 global biodiversity framework is now not only aspirational, but also very achievable. We would also like to thank parties and other entities who have made financial commitment, including most recently from China. We're confident this will move the negotiation of the framework forward at the next meeting of the Working Group 2020 planned for January 2020. As you may recall, our journey to Kunming was launched in January 2019 with regional and thematic consultation held in preparation for the first meeting of the working group in Nairobi in August 2019. At the first meeting, parties and stakeholders began to shape the scope and content of the framework and provided clear guidance on how the key elements should be developed further. Following the first meeting, we continued our work through a range of workshops and thematic dialogues on topics such as ecosystem restoration, marine and coastal biodiversity, area-based conservation measures, and the scientific basis for biodiversity action. We also gained valuable insight on resource mobilization and the essential elements needed to implement, monitor, and reporting and review. To ensure inclusivity and transparency, we organized a workshop on the role of indigenous people and local communities, as well as possible communication strategy for the framework. At the request of the working group at its first meeting, we prepared a first zero draft of the framework for consideration at the second meeting of the working group in Rome in February 2020, where representatives of government and stakeholders offered detailed comments and recommendations to advance the draft. The work then continues through further thematic consultation, dialogues with experts and expert meetings on topics such as capacity building, technical and scientific cooperation, sustainable use, and digital sequence information on genetic resources, as well as a second thematic dialogue for indigenous people and local community. In August 2020, we published an updated zero draft of the framework based on the outcome of this second meeting. We should also note that during this time, the COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted the work toward COP15, and we had to find many ways to maintain momentum. We therefore organized numerous webinars on issues such as new gender plan of action, long-term approach to mainstreaming biodiversity, and the role of subnational government and local authorities, regional C program, and 4 additional meetings on digital sequencing information. We also had a webinar on the linkage between climate change and biodiversity, sustainable agriculture, and science policy interface in the financial sector. I'll now pass the floor to my co-chair, Francis Ockwell. Francis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, co-chair, and I will now come to the remaining part of our updates. Dear delegates, based on these extensive consultations and over 2,000 individual comments received from parties and stakeholders during SAPSA 24th and SBI 3, we published the first draft of the framework in July 2021, which formed the basis of discussions at the first part of the third meeting of the working group, which took place virtually from 23rd August to 3rd September 2021. At this working group meeting, we were pleased to see the highest participation ever in subsidiary body meetings, with more than 120 parties registered and more than 50 parties providing more than 700 comments on the first draft of the framework during the contact group sessions. Dear delegates, this indicates strong engagement and participation. The report of this meeting provides an overview of the discussions and includes an annex with the detailed reports prepared by the co-leads of the contact groups on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and DSI. Together, these reports will inform discussions at the resumed in-person Part 2 of the third meeting, which will be held in January 2022 in Geneva, Switzerland. In Decision 1434, 13 overarching principles are outlined, which we have consistently applied through the process. In the face of the ongoing pandemic, dear delegates, we had no choice but to build a flexible process that allowed us to advance our work through an iterative approach, building towards a consensus. We continually engage scientists and knowledge holders and build on the advice of SAPSA 23 and 24 and SBI 3 to increase efficiency and avoid duplication. The ambitious and broad in scope targets, and especially the proposed associated numerical aspects, provide for a truly transformational framework. Further, we have provided numerous opportunities for stakeholders to participate and be included in our process, with a particular emphasis on the participation of indigenous peoples and local communities and women, girls, and youth. We also made sure that women are not only heard, but have also equally occupied prominent positions, for instance, as co-leads of contact groups and speakers at webinars and thematic consultations. We have kept all stakeholders informed in a transparent way at each stage of the process, through constant communication, including through our periodic updates posted on the CBD website. We have also taken every opportunity to make our process globally visible by making hundreds of presentations to numerous fora globally. At each step, we have ensured that results were as clear as possible and that relevant experts were engaged. We are committed to carry out the responsibility to maintain the overarching principles over the next phase of our work. We have come a long way since Nairobi, but considerable work still lies ahead. Having benefited from the comments from parties and stakeholders on the successive drafts of the framework, as well as the submissions and views expressed during the formal meetings, my co-chair and I are confident that we are in a good position to identify issues for further consideration, such as linkages between the goals, milestones, and targets, and their numerical elements, along with the area of convergence and possible solutions. We will continue working closely with SAPSA and SBI, with the support of the Secretariat and guidance from the Bureau to ensure that the resumed session in Geneva in January 2022 will deliver as promised and bring us one step closer to our common goal. We stand ready to continue our support for parties and stakeholders in their effort to deliver and adopt an ambitious post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework at the second phase of COP15 in Kunming in May 2022. Thank you, Mr. President.
好，非常感谢范阿弗尔和奥格瓦先生的发言。我们注意到2020年后全球生物多样性框架不限成员名额工作组联合主席的进展报告，并要求联合主席通过工作组
The meeting of the Conference of the Parties is also expected to take note of the progress report by the co-chairs of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and request the co-chairs to continue their work and submit the final report in the second part. Any objections? No objections. It's so decided. Now I would like to announce the closing of the joint plenary. Now we will resume the meeting of COP15. Let's turn to item 5, report of the Compliance Committee. I would like to invite Mr. Rigobert Net, Chair of the Compliance Committee under the Cartagena Protocol, to provide a brief report on the work of the committee during the intersessional period. Please have the floor. Mr. Net, please have the floor. Chair of the Compliance Committee, please have the floor.
President, for giving me the floor. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my colleagues, members of the Compliance Committee under the Cartagena Protocol, and in my capacity as the chair of the committee, it is a great honor and pleasure for me to introduce the report of the Compliance Committee for your consideration. The report is contained in document CBD-CP/MOP/10/2. The report before you presents the summary of the work that the committee has undertaken at its 16th and 17th meetings, as well as the recommendations that the committee wishes to submit to this 10th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. The recommendations are presented in the annex to the report. Their substance will be considered as part of the agenda items to which they most closely relate during part 2 of this meeting next year. Mr. President, the committee's 16th meeting was held at the offices of the Secretariat in Montreal from 29 to 31st May 2019. Due to the challenges posed by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the 17th meeting of the committee was held online from 15 to 17 April 2020. While recalling its rules of procedure, the committee considered that the alternate arrangements for its online meeting provided for live sessions that will allow the members to engage directly with one another and contribute to the discussions in a similar way as in face-to-face setting. Against this background, and considering the exceptional circumstances, the committee agreed that the alternative arrangements were suitable and will allow the committee to adopt its report, including recommendations to the Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties. The committee considered a number of different issues during its 2 meetings, including submission of national reports, compliance action plans, submission of information to the Biosafety Clearinghouse, and it provided input to the 4th assessment and review of the protocol and the final evaluation of the protocol strategic plan. In the interest of time, however, I will not go into detail today on the substance of the work undertaken by the committee. Instead, a more detailed overview will be provided during part 2 of the meeting when the committee's recommendations are to be considered. Mr. President, the term of 10 out of 15 of the committee's members were to expire on 21st December 2020. Since the 10th meeting of the parties could not held before this date, no election of new members could take place before the expiry of their term. In consultation with the Bureau, the terms of those members were extended until 21st December 2021 in order to enable the committee to continue to function. As a result, the committee was able to organize informal online discussions among the members, thus allowing us to maintain the momentum of our work. The election of new members by the meeting of the parties is now foreseen to take place during part 2 of this very meeting in Kunming next year. Finally, Mr. President, despite the opportunities online means have provided for the committee to continue its work. The sentiment within the committee was that physical meetings provide a better opportunity to discuss the delicate matter of compliance, and in this light, I express my hope that the committee will be able to resume its face-to-face meetings in the coming year, following the consideration by the meeting of the parties of the substance of the committee's work. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for your report. The committee's recommendations will be addressed at part 2 of the meeting in 2022. We will also elect the members of the Compliance Committee at the resumed session in 2022. I would therefore like to remind regions to identify your nominees from among the parties to the Cartagena Protocol. I recognize that the term of the office of the existing members of the Compliance Committee, whose terms has expired by the end of 2020, was extended in agreement of the Bureau until the end of this year. Since there is a need to align the term of office of members with the cycle of the COP meetings, I therefore propose further extension of the terms of these members until the end of next year. The Bureau has agreed to this proposal at its meeting held on 10th October. I assume there is no objection to this proposal. No objection, so it is agreed. I now adjourn the meeting of COP10. Now let's resume the meeting of COP4. Let's turn to item 5 of COP4, report of the Compliance Committee. I would like to invite Mrs. Kona Schroeder, Chair of the Compliance Committee, to provide a report on this item. Please have the floor, Mrs. Schroeder. Please have the floor, Mrs. Schroeder.
President. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to take the floor in my capacity as chair of the Compliance Committee under the Nagoya Protocol to introduce the report of the committee. The report is contained in document CBD/NP/CC/3/5 and reflects the work done by the committee at its third meeting, which was held from 21 through 23 April 2020. Due to the circumstances imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the meeting was held online through virtual real-time sessions, as well as through an online forum made available by the Secretariat in accordance with its rules and procedures. The committee elected its chair and vice chair, namely myself and Mr. Tianbao King, respectively. The committee considered different substance matters, including the submission of interim national reports and a number of general issues of compliance, and agreed to make recommendations to this fourth meeting of the parties to the protocol. The substance of these recommendations will be considered during part 2 of this meeting next year. At that point in time, a more detailed update will be provided. Mr. President, the terms of 5 of the committee's members will expire on 31 December 2020. Since the fourth meeting of the parties could not be held before this date, no election of new members could take place before the expiry of their term. In consultation with the Bureau, the terms of those members were extended until 31st December 2021 in order to enable the committee to continue to function. The election of new members by the meeting of the parties is now foreseen to take place during part 2 of this meeting. Finally, Mr. President, as I mentioned, the committee's third meeting was held in April 2020. In the early days of this global pandemic, I am grateful to the committee members for being flexible to adapt to the meeting in online setting, and to the Secretariat for making tools available to enable us to continue our work. This being said, Mr. President, I express my hope that the committee will be able to resume its face-to-face meetings in the coming year. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for your report, Mrs. Schroeder. The recommendations of the committee will be addressed at the resumed session of the meeting in 2022. We will also elect the members of the Compliance Committee and observers from indigenous peoples and local committees at the resumed session. And I would like to remind regions to identify your nominees. The Secretariat will also issue a notification on more information about the resumed session. Following on what we agreed a while ago in terms of tenure for the members of Compliance Committee, I propose that we further extend the term to the end of next year. I believe that this suggestion is acceptable to all. Any objections or suggestions? No objections. So it's so decided. Now I adjourn the meeting of COP15. Let's resume the joint plenary of COP15, COP10, and COP4. Next, let's consider the interim budget for the convention and the protocols. I would like to invite the chair of the Budget Connect Group, Mr. Spencer Thomas of Grenada, to give a report on the work of the contact group. Mr. Thomas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to provide an update on the work of the contact group on budget. As mandated, the contact group met and prepared a draft budget for the program of work of 2020. I am pleased to submit on behalf of the group the consensus document L2 for the consideration of the plenary. I thank all delegates for their contributions and compromises made, which enabled us to successfully complete our work. I thank the Secretariat for the support provided to the group. Mr. President, I submit document L2 for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Thomas. And also like to thank all the delegates in the contact group. Thank you for your hard work in the budget contact group. At this stage, I would like to adjourn the joint plenary session of COP15, COP10, and COP4. I would like to resume the meeting of COP15. Distinguished delegates, as you have heard, the Budget Contact Group has already considered in detail the interim budget proposed by the Secretariat for year 2022 and submitted its recommendations as mandated. There are 3 sets of draft resolutions before you. I would like to submit to the plenary. L2
Now I submit document 15.1 L2 for consideration and adoption. Is there any objection? I don't see any objection. L2 and its interim budget contained is now adopted. Now I declare the meeting of COP15 is adjourned. We resume the meeting of COP10. Now I'd like to invite parties to the Cartagena Protocol to consider and adopt the proposed decision on the interim budget for 2022 contained in document CBD/CP/MOP/10.1/L2. I noted that this draft decision is substantially the same as the one just adopted under the Conference of the Parties. I'd like to invite the Secretariat to make any additional comments. The Secretariat, the floor is yours.
2 small corrections to the text of this document, CBD-CP MOP 10 L2. The first is in the first operative paragraph, paragraph 1, which should read, approves on an exceptional and interim basis a core program budget for the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, and the rest continues unchanged. This aligns the text of this paragraph with the text in the corresponding paragraph of the COP budget decision just adopted. The second correction is in Table 1A, which follows paragraph 5. Table 1A the 4th line from the bottom, where it presently says convention share of the interim budget, 15%. This should say Cartagena Protocol share of the interim budget. So replace convention with Cartagena Protocol. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Secretariat, for the comments and the corrections. Do I hear any objection? No, I don't see any. The proposed interim budget for 2022 contained document L2 is now adopted. Now, I would like to adjourn the COP10 and resume the meeting of COP4. Now I invite parties to the Nagoya Protocol to consider and adopt the proposed decision on the interim budget for 2022 contained document CBD-L2. Now, I invite the Secretariat to make some explanation.
To make the same corrections to this document, CBD NP MOP 4L2, the same as we just made in the Cartagena Protocol 1. So in paragraph 1, it should read, approves on an exceptional and interim basis a core budget for the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing. Then it continues unchanged. And in table 1A, the fourth line from the bottom, the word convention should be replaced by the words Nagoya Protocol, such that it reads Nagoya Protocol share of the interim budget 11%. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, David, for your additional comments. Do I see any objection from any delegates? Because I noticed that these draft resolution and these document is actually substantively the same as the one we adopted. Do we have any objection? I don't see anyone. Then the proposed interim budget for 2022 containing document L2 is adopted. Now, I adjourn the meeting of COP 4 and resume the meeting of COP 10. We now turn to agenda item 18, other matters. I open the floor for any other matters to be discussed by COP 10. Do we have any requests for the floor? I don't see any. Thank you all. Now we move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 19, adoption of the report on part 1 of the meeting, which is contained in document L1, which has been distributed online. I hope you have all had a chance to read it. Now I would like to invite Rapporteur Elvana Ramagi of Albania to introduce the document.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to introduce the draft report on the proceedings of the first part of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, which has been made available as document CBD/CP/MOP/10/part1/L1. As it is customary with meetings under the Convention and the protocols, the report is largely a procedural one. It reflects the statements made at the opening session and the decisions taken on organizational matters. I commend this report to you for adoption on the understanding that it will prepare the final report once the meeting is over in consultation with the President and with the support of the Secretariat. The record of today's proceedings will also be incorporated into the final version of the report before it is made available. I thank everyone, report writers and the Secretariat, who assisted me and contributed to the preparation and finalization of this report. With that, I am pleased to submit for your adoption, the report of the Part 1 of the 10th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Cartagena Protocol. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. Now, I hereby submit the draft report on Part 1 of the meeting for adoption. I propose that we review the report section by section. Now, the preamble part. Any comments? I see none. Agenda item 1. Any comments or anyone requesting the floor? Item 2. None. Item 3. None. Item 4 and 5. Any comments? None. Item 6. I see none. Since item 7 till 17 are not to be considered during part 1, so we skip to item 18 to 20. Any comments on items 18 to 20? I see none. Thank you very much. The Secretariat will, in consultation with the Habokta, include everything that's going to be adjusted and corrected in the report. Now I propose that we adopt the report. The report is now adopted with the changes approved. As usual, the consolidated report will be reviewed by the Habokta for clearance before it is released. I now adjourn the meeting of COP15, and then we resume the meeting of COP4. We turn our attention to COP4 agenda item 17, other matters. We invite people to raise issues or making comments. Anyone requesting for the floor? None. Thank you. Next. Agenda item 18. Adoption of the report on part 1 of the meeting, which is contained in document CBD NP MOP 4.1 L1, which has been uploaded online. I hope you all have a chance to read it. Now I'd like to invite Habokta Elvana Ramaj of Albania to introduce the document.
As it is customary with meetings under the Convention and the protocols, the report is largely a procedural one. It reflects the statements made at the opening session and the decisions taken on organizational matters. I commend this report to you for adoption on the understanding that I will prepare the final report once the meeting is over in consultation with the President and with the support of the Secretariat. The record of today's proceedings will incorporate it into the final version of the report before it is made available. I thank everyone, report writers and the Secretariat who assisted me and contributed to preparation and finalization of this report. With that, I am pleased to submit for your adoption the report of the Part 1 of the fourth meeting of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Nagoya Protocol. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Raman. Now I'm hereby submitting the draft report on part 1 of the meeting for adoption. I propose that we review the report section by section. I have noted that this report is almost identical to the content that was just now submitted. Can we adopt this text, this report? I don't see any comments. The report is thus adopted. I now adjourn the meeting of COP15 of Nagoya Protocol, and let's resume the meeting of COP15 of CBD. Distinguished colleagues, our next agenda item is agenda item 28, other matters. I open the floor for any comments on any other matters to be raised by COP15. Are there any delegates who want to speak? I see one delegate, a Japanese delegate, wants to speak. He raised his hand. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation would like to speak briefly under the agenda item 28, other matters. Mr. President, my delegation acknowledged the adoption of Kunming Declaration adoption of the Kunming Declaration at the high-level segment Wednesday this week. It is recalled that during the plenary session on Monday, my delegation took the floor to seek clarification on drafting process and the nature of the draft declaration. As Honorable Minister Huang mentioned at the closing plenary of the ministerial segment on Wednesday, that the declaration was intended to demonstrate our determination and build political momentum. This was not a negotiated COP decision and not legally binding in nature, which my delegation noted with appreciation. Having said that, the foregoing, my delegation would hasten to add that given given that some of our comments and suggested modifications were not fully taken into account despite efforts made by the host. It logically follows for us that some of the text in the declaration does not set the precedent over ongoing and future intergovernmental discussion in the context of CBD, the United Nations, nor other intergovernmental fora. Mr. President, my delegation of Japan requests the statement made both on Monday and today be recorded in the report of COP15 Part 1 as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Japanese delegate, for your remarks. Thank you very much. It's excellent. We have noted your request and we will record it. Are there any other delegates who would like to take the floor? I don't see any other requests for the floor. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to turn to agenda item 29, adoption of the report on part 1 of the meeting. The report is contained in document CBD/COP/15.1/L.1, which has been distributed online. I hope that all delegates have had a chance to read it. I now invite the rapporteur, Mrs. Rama of Albania, to introduce the document again.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, I'm pleased to introduce the draft report on the proceedings of the first part of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, which has been made available as document CBD/COP/15/part1/L1. As it is customary with meetings under the Convention and the protocols, the report is largely a procedural one. It reflects the statements made at the opening session and the decisions taken on organizational matters. I commend this report to you for adoption on the understanding that I will prepare the final report on the meeting once this meeting is over in consultation with the President and with the support of the Secretariat. The record of today's proceedings will also be incorporated into the final version of the report before it is made available. I thank everyone, reporters and the Secretariat, who assisted me and contributed on the preparation and finalization of this report. With that, I am pleased to submit for your adoption the report of the Part 1 of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Ramaj. I hereby submit the draft report of the meeting for adoption. I propose that we review the report section by section. Let's review the report section by section. Are there any comments on Chapter 1 or Part A of the meeting? I see no hands raised. Are there comments on Part B of the report? I see no hands raised. Part C is divided into several sections. For Section C, Item 1, are there any comments? I don't see any. What about 2? I don't see any. What about 3 and 4? I don't see any hands raised. Are there any comments on Item 6? No. What about 7? No. What about 28 to 30? 28, 29, and 30? I don't see any comments. Thank you very much. The Secretariat will consult with the rapporteur and will incorporate all the changes approved by the meeting. With this understanding, I request the plenary to adopt the document. The report is adopted with the changes approved. Thank you. As usual, the completed and edited report will be reviewed by the rapporteur for clearance before it is released. I now adjourn the plenary of COP15 of CBD and now resume the joint plenary of the last session of the part 1 of COP15 of CBD, COP10 of Cartagena Protocol, and COP4 of Nagoya Protocol. Which is the closure of the plenary. Now we turn to item 30. Item 30 of COP15 of CBD, item 20 of MOP10 of Cartagena Protocol, and item 19 of MOP4 of Nagoya Protocol, which is closure of the meeting. I now give the floor. First of all, I would like to ask if there are any comments from representatives of major regions or stakeholders or parties. Now I see the representative United Kingdoms request the floor. UK, you have the floor.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Secretariat for hosting this first part of COP15 this week. In just over 2 weeks' time, the UK will host COP26 in Glasgow. Like you, we recognise the huge responsibility that has been placed upon us to achieve truly transformational outcomes. We cannot fail to step up to the challenges and expectations that have been set out for us. The UK remains fully committed to the adoption of an ambitious global biodiversity framework. We believe that our collaboration during this week has laid a strong foundation to continue our work. There remains much to do at the meetings in Geneva, Switzerland, and the resumed session of this 15th Conference of the Parties in 2022. The UK attaches great importance to the full and effective participation in these meetings from all, particularly in the light of the COVID pandemic and the challenges faced, especially by developing countries. In this regard, I am very pleased to announce that the UK government will today commit additional voluntary funding of £200,000 to the Special Voluntary Trust Fund for the facilitating participation in the convention process. We look forward to working with you all over the coming months. 谢谢, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from United Kingdoms. Thank you. Are there any other delegates who want to take the floor? Now, I would like to invite the Chinese delegate to take the floor. Distinguished chair, representatives. First of all, the Chinese delegation would like to congratulate the successful completion of the meeting and the achievements scored under your leadership. President Xi Jinping and the senior state leaders and the government leaders have called together to reverse the biodiversity laws and build a shared future for all life on Earth, and thus injecting impetus and strong political will into this grand cause. The Chinese government is donating 1.5 billion Chinese yuan to set up this Kunming Biodiversity Fund to support the biodiversity cause of developing countries. Now, the Kunming Declaration is it guides us for our future path. Mr. President, this meeting has laid a solid foundation for the second phase of meeting next year. The Chinese delegation would like to, under your leadership, work together with all delegations to successfully accomplish the negotiations for the post-2020 framework and score other achievements. In closing, the Chinese delegation would like to thank the Secretariat for successfully organizing the meeting. We'd also like to thank the representatives from all regions and from all stakeholders, and also the interpreters and volunteers and all other working staff for their efforts. We thank the government of Yunnan Province and Kunming Municipality for their hospitality and thoughtful arrangements. We thank you for your careful arrangements and your effort in the past 2 years. We look forward to seeing all of you here in the beautiful city of Kunming next spring, so that we can have a face-to-face meeting with all of you. Thank you.
I thank you, distinguished delegates from China. Delegates. Next, I would like to invite the Executive Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity, Madame Elizabeth Mamura Mrema, to deliver a closing remarks.
His Excellency Minister Wang, Minister of Ecology and Environment of China, our COP15 President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. This has been an extraordinary United Nations Biodiversity Conference, an intense week for participants joining meetings in person and virtually, and for those behind the scenes. Despite the exceptional nature of the circumstances arising from the pandemic, we have addressed critical areas of work, demonstrating our capacity to adjust to changes and to advance on our journey to the part 2 of the Conference of the Parties in 2022. Over the past 5 days, we have adopted an interim integrated budget for 2022 for the Convention, the Cartagena Biosafety Protocol, and the Nagoya Access and Benefit Sharing Protocol. We have had a progress report from the co-chairs of the open-ended working group on post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and from the chairs of the subsidiary bodies, and we have heard their expectations leading to 2022. And because of the high-level segment, with the endorsement of the Kunming Declaration and the groundswell of commitments for biodiversity, as well as the initiative launched earlier today for protecting biodiversity for shared global ecological civilization, we can all feel a renewed sense of optimism. My appreciation to all of you for delivering these positive outcomes and for establishing the guide rails for the path ahead. To our hosts, the Vice Premier, Mr. Han Shan, Minister Huang, and the COP15 Executive Committee, the Vice Minister, Mr. Hingman, thank you all for your leadership and resolve to organize this first part of the conference. We leave the city of Kunming with collective political impetus to put biodiversity on the path to recovery, moving forward and stirring together further and faster. My deep thanks to the people of the province of Yunnan and the city of Kunming. This province and this city have become a symbol of an ecological civilization. As a global community, our convening here in Kunming reminds us of our responsibility to safeguard our cultural, traditional, and biological diversity and to build our shared future for all life on Earth. To all delegations representing 154 parties to the convention, including the 2 protocols, joined this meeting. I applaud your resilience and resolve to rise to this moment in history, setting the stage for the adoption of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework next year here in Kunming at the second part of our Conference of the Parties. The engagement of the many non-state actors has also inspired us to be bold and inclusive. All of society must be engaged in responding to this urgent call to action. I would also like to thank sincerely all the dedicated staff and the many volunteers at the venue and outside, as well as throughout the city of Kunming, for facilitating our work, accommodation, transport, and many other activities during our meeting. To the IT operators, for the online platforms, and to the interpreters, thank you for all your tireless support and assistance, which is so essential for any successful meeting. And I also want to thank my own staff for their continued hard work and dedication that made for a seamless, flawless, and productive meeting. I'm honored to lead and be part of such a committed group representing the United Nations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today also marks a significant occasion, the 11th anniversary of the adoption of the Nagoya Kuala Lumpur Supplementary Protocol on Liability and Redress to the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. In 2018, the supplementary protocol entered into force as an international treaty providing international rules and procedures on liability and redress relating to living modified organisms. I urge and invite all parties to the Biosafety Protocol yet to do so to consider ratifying or acceding to the supplementary protocol. I equally call upon the Convention on Biological Diversity parties to do so to ratify the Cartagena Protocol as well as the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing so that we can together take further steps to strengthen multilateralism. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the journey ahead to the second part of the COP15 presents a unique opportunity to write a new chapter for our planet and the future generation. Our collective journey calls for collective vision across whole of government and whole of society. An early challenge is to confront biodiversity crises along the climate and land degradation crises. Our journey must include a coherent message to the climate COP26 and beyond to the Convention on Desertification COP later next year, and to ensure equitable and sustainable benefits to all people, we must solve both biodiversity loss, climate change, as well as ecosystems degradation. They must be treated as mutually supporting goals. We cannot treat these issues separately. Either we solve them both or we solve neither. In preparing for the resumed meetings of the Convention's subsidiary bodies and the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework to be held in Geneva, Switzerland in January 2022, we must continue to press ahead on several outstanding issues. Let me outline only three of challenges. First, we must ensure that the framework is sufficiently ambitious to meet our goals and achieve our vision, addressing all drivers of biodiversity loss. Second, this must be matched by commensurate ambition in finance and other fields, and thus the need for a robust replenishment for biodiversity from the Global Environmental Facility, which is the Convention's financial mechanism, becomes opportune. And at this point, I also wish to acknowledge with thanks the just announced contribution from the government of UK to support these ongoing processes. And third, the framework must include a mechanism to ensure that we stay on track to achieve our targets and goals, to be able to reach our 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. I believe these are essential to shape and advance a meaningful post-2020 global biodiversity framework to be finalized here in Kunming next year. And to do that, we need a step change in the negotiations to make concrete the vision and commitments expressed this week by our leaders. I trust that we will each do our part to engage in constructive negotiations with the vision and courage to be bold, inclusive, and ambitious new framework, one that will drive us forward with the necessary means of implementation and catalyzes engagement and actions by all to accelerate the shift needed and to reach the 2030 targets and 2050 goals. Time is now for all of us to show the leadership commensurate with the challenge. This is our opportunity and indeed our responsibility to work together to build a shared future for all life on Earth. Thank you.
I thank you, Madame Maruma Mrema. Thank you for your remarks. Your Excellency, Madame Mrema, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. After 5 days of intensive meetings, COP15 Part 1 is now coming to an end. Our hard work has paid off, with good progress across all fronts, laying a solid foundation for the next step with fruitful results. Now, let us brief what we have achieved in the past 5 days. First, the high-level segment. 95 parties and organizations have participated in the meeting injecting new impetus for the future direction. President Xi and UN Secretary General Guterres attended the meeting and delivered important remarks. 95 parties and 23 international institutions and organizations attended the high-level segment and points to
providing direction for our next step of global biodiversity governance and also boost our political momentum. Second, the Kunming Declaration. It is a solid support for the COVID-15 and also calls for political commitment from all of us. This declaration is a result of our COP15 and also calling for all of us to take actions to respond to the call for building the shared future for mankind, achieving sustainable development. Third, advancing the CBD process, providing the guarantee for a successful part 2 of the meeting. During part 1, we considered the intersessional work of COP15, COP10 to the Cartagena Protocol, and COP4 to the Nagoya Protocol. We also heard the reports of the compliance committees of the 2 protocols and reviewed the progress of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. On this basis, we adopted the meeting report submitted by the rapporteurs. In addition, we also considered and adopted the 2022 interim budget proposed by the Secretariat to ensure its normal operations. Fourth, the Ecological Civilization Forum was held successfully as an important approach to build a shared future for all. As the only offline event during part 1 of COP15, this forum facilitated in-depth discussions and experience sharing on climate change and biodiversity protection, mainstreaming ecological civilization and biodiversity. Green mountains are gold mountains from concepts to practices, as well as MBS for ecological protection and restoration. We have reached consensus and strive to join hands to build a shared future for all. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close part 1 of COP15, we will continue to work on part 2 next year. By then, we will be ready to welcome all of you to join us in Kunming. I would like to look forward to seeing all of you in Kunming and also adopting an ambitious and realistic post-2020 biodiversity framework. As an old Chinese saying goes, if we work together, we will be able to overcome any obstacles. During this week, I had this strong feeling that each one of us is a member of the CBD family. And we are making unremitting efforts to build a shared future for all life on Earth. Here, I would like to pay tribute to the cooperative spirit of all the delegates during the meeting and express my heartfelt thanks for your hard work. As president of COP15, I sincerely hope that all of us will be able to sustain this precious cooperative momentum into part 12 of COP15 and continue to lend support to my work so as to jointly drive the CBD process forward. I will also earnestly perform my duties as president, work together with all parties to translate consensus into practical actions, and actively promote the achievement of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework and other important outcomes so that we can achieve our targets and goals of the framework, and also formulate transformative global biodiversity protection action plans. In this way, we were able to drive transformative actions in biodiversity protections and halt the trend of global biodiversity loss. Here, I would like to thank all of you who joined online and all of you who joined offline, as well as representatives from all governments and organizations. Your presence here have shown mankind's unity in dealing with global challenges. I would also like to thank Madam Elizabeth Murema, the CBD Executive Secretary, and your entire team. Thank you all for the tremendous hard work, without which the success of COP15 Part 1 would not have been possible. I also hope that we will join hands again for the preparation of Part 2. I would also like to thank the Switzerland's government for your generous support for the meetings in Geneva next year. I would like to thank all the members of the COP15 Organizing Committee of China for your cooperation and strong support. My special thanks also go to local governments at all levels in Yunnan for your thoughtful and meticulous arrangements. Finally, I also want to thank China's COP15 Executive Committee, as well as all the volunteers. Without your hard work and your thoughtful details, the conference would not have been a success. Let's continue our work for the second part. Thank you all again for your support to China to serve as president and host of COP15. For those of you who join on site, I wish you a safe journey home. For delegates online, I wish you good health and all the best. Look forward to seeing all of you in Kunming next year. Hope that we can seek common ground from our differences and join our hands to achieve balanced, ambitious, and a realistic post-2020 biodiversity framework. Thank you very much. I now declare Part 1 of COP15, COP Mob 10, and COP Mob 4 close.